Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our
Right.
first Static Web Apps Community Standup. And let's start with intros. Anyone want to get started with intros?
I mean, you're already talking. Go for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Gauvin. I'm a product manager on the Static Web Apps team. And I'm joined today with some exceptional people, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Matt, you want to
All
kick it off?
right. So I'm also a product manager on Static Web Apps team. I think I'm actually the newest member on the team. I joined in October. Before that, I was doing VS Code stuff with Azure experiences, which actually I'll show a little bit of later. Yeah, I've been a JavaScript developer for a while, and the web is what I love. So that's why I'm here. How about Mitali?
Hi everyone, I'm Mitali. I'm the engineering manager for the Static Web Apps team, so I get to work with the amazing team that puts together the service that you love, and I've been working on Static Web Apps from the very first day of the service.
Nice.
I'm Annina. I'm an engineer on the team. I'm joining from Vancouver, BC right now, and I'm joining from Vancouver, and I'm an engineer on the team. And I'm very excited to be joining our very first community startup today.
Yeah, awesome. So this is the first edition, right, team? This is our first edition of the Azure Static Web Apps Community Standups. And essentially what this initiative is to get some feedback, share the progress of certain features that we've been working on, and really just interact with everyone from the community. So yeah, we have a great session in store for you all today. We're going to be starting off by looking at static web apps from scratch, introducing the product a little bit, and then walking you through a couple of different demos that will be helping you depending on your different development workflow. So on that note, I'll hand it off to Annina, who is going to talk to us about static web apps.
Yeah, so I'll just start with like a quick product and feature overview. This is like a super high level introduction. We will do a lot of deep dives on some of these topics in like the following community meetings as well. But so since some of you might be joining, being like totally new to the product, let's like really start with like, what is Azure Static Web Apps? So we are a service that makes it extremely easy and efficient to build and deploy your full stack web apps. And what I mean with that is basically that static part of your website that is delivered to the user's web browser as is, as well as some sort of dynamic backend that is required in many cases. And so what we provide is a very simple and cost-effective solution for hosting static content, and also either take care in a similar manner to host an API as a serverless function, or allow even for very easy integrations with other Azure services. For hosting your API. And so through that, we can provide many features centered around that exact use case to make the life of the developer a lot easier. And so one of these features is, for example, built-in CI/CD. And what that means is that to create a static web app, you really only need to provide your code repository, like, for example, in form of like a GitHub URL, and we will do all the rest. So essentially, we will take care of creating the workflow to build and deploy the web app, and then we'll distribute the files globally. And so like that, we make sure that the content is always super close to your user and always highly available by basically distributing the content of data centers all over the world. And then once this pipeline is set up, it's also very, very easy to update your content, because the pipeline automatically deploys your content if you push any new commits to your source repository. And then you can just focus on like building your business logic and don't need to deal with any of the other things. And that's also what's visualized in the slide. Now, many scenarios will require some sort of API to handle the dynamic content in addition to the static content. And static web apps makes it very easy to integrate your API with your site. And we provide two different main ways to do this. The easiest and the most straightforward way that you can also see on the slide is our managed functions feature, where the only thing you need to do really is you need to provide your API functions code in your source code repository, and then we'll do the same thing as with your static content, where we'll build and deploy your content to an Azure function app. And then in addition to that, we'll also handle the routing from your static web app to your function, so you don't have to deal with that either. And we secure the function app so that only traffic from your static web app can go to the function app. So in this case, you still really don't have to do anything. You really only need to provide your code repository, and we'll handle all the rest. And so now if you want to be like a little bit more flexible and you're like, okay, Azure Functions maybe isn't the way to go for me, we have like another option for you where you can just bring your own API. And so we support multiple different backend types where you can, for example, deploy your code to an Azure web app or like a container app or API management. And then you can link this backend to your static web app, and then you'll still get all the benefits, like with managed functions, where we'll take care of the routing and we set up the authentication, and you can communicate with your API just through the default host name or the host name of your site. But you can manage your backend, but don't have to deal with any of that. So it gives you like a lot of flexibility. So that's it for like the basic setup of like your site and backend app. And then we provide many other features around that, right? To like make it very easy for you to create like a full-fledged app. And like one of the things that I think is like super important and a thing that you often require is like authentication, right? And so we offer built-in authentication authorization capabilities. And these make it like very easy to like secure your static web app and also identify your end user without needing to implement like a whole auth flow, because we provide it out of the box. So there are different solutions to that. You can either use our pre-configured identity providers, where we support Azure Active Directory, Twitter, and GitHub, where really you can totally fully use our login and logout flow and don't need to do any additional configuration. Or more importantly, you can just configure your own identity provider. We support like any OpenID, any provider that also supports OpenID, or also many other providers like Facebook or Google, etc. And you just need to configure the provider, and you can still make use of our out-of-the-box authentication flow. So we'll take care of logging in the user and then also setting the right cookies and everything. So you don't have to deal with that either. Another thing that I think is very interesting is we auto-generate a name for your website. So it's super nice and easy to directly access your app after you deploy it. But obviously, we'll also give you a very easy way to add a custom domain to your site. And then we'll also generate free SSL and TSL certificates so that you don't have to deal with that either. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that we also have tooling support through the Azure CLI, which allows you in a very easy way to manage and deploy your static web apps using the command line. And we even have our very own static web app CLI, but I think we'll do like another dedicated community stand-up just to focus on that. And so this was just like a super slim overview. We provide many more features. We have like CDN, private endpoints, also very important staging environments, which just make it very easy for you to like deploy to staging and then like test your feature before you merge it to production. And many, many more features. You can check it out online. But that's it from me now. I'm gonna like forward to my team members now to like show you, make all these promises I made you come through and show you how simple it really is to create a static web app.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, it is a fairly complex product in itself because of all the features that are provided from all the different places, which is why we actually, since this is the first one, we wanted to show some ways you can get started, whether you're comfortable in the web portal, or if you're a CLI person, or even if you're in VS Code. So I think the first one we want to start with is Mitali with the portal.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. Can someone confirm that they can see my screen? They cannot.
Not yet.
Oh, because I never selected the first screen. Okay. Now can you see it?
Yep.
Perfect. So I'm going to start just walking everyone through a quick demo of when you have an app in your GitHub repo, how you can turn that into a globally distributed static web app. And so here I have a very vanilla GitHub repo. I have some front-end code with the very basic HTML file, and I have API code, which I want powering my dynamic backend. Nothing very fancy, just very basic stuff. However, despite just having this repo, it's super easy for me to just make a very easy static web app. And so I enter my subscription, I select my resource group, and I name my resource. There are 2 SKUs to choose from. You can start off with a free SKU where we will not charge you for anything around your app. This is a really great way to get started, where you just want to explore the product, explore the capabilities of the product. Most of our features are offered for free, so it's a really good place for you to try us out. We do also have a standard SKU. This is for those production quality enterprise apps. And it's at a low fee of $9 a month, and you get more involved functionality if you pick standard SKU. So I'm just going to go with standard SKU, and your backend function and your staging environments will live in one region, but the rest of your content will be globally distributed. And so here I'll just pick West US. And now I want to select this GitHub repo to deploy to this app. And so what I'm going to do is I'm already logged in with my GitHub account to the portal, but I'm going to select the organization. I'm going to select my repository. And then this is going to auto load the branches in my repository, and it's going to select them. Then I need to select my app and API location. If I'm using any framework like React or Vue or any of those, we have selectors that will auto select this information, but because this is just a plain old vanilla app, it isn't following any such framework. And so all my static content, my app location is source, and all my backend content, my API location, is in the API folder. And so I hit create, and after this deployment gets created, I'm going to get my static web app resource. And what's going to happen is we're going to kick off a deployment of my source code to my static web app resource. And this is going to make use of GitHub Actions. And so we see this deployment being kicked off. And within a couple minutes, all my code is going to get built, and everything is going to be fully globally distributed. And so here you can just monitor the progress of the GitHub action, but I don't want to bore you with that. But in the meantime, we can just explore everything the portal offers. We offer a really easy way for you to integrate any custom domains that you want with your app. The configuration blade looks very similar to what you might be familiar with the rest of the app service suite in terms of web apps or function apps. When you create staging environments, as Annina was mentioning, those get populated here. You're able to assign managed identity to the app over here, etc. And so there's just a lot of functionality that this portal has on display. And right now we're on the final steps of the build process, where it's actually deploying all the content globally. And we do this so that if you have a global presence for your app, there's nothing that you need to do. We're going to take care of that for you. And so just in a couple seconds, this deployment should complete as it did. And here we have a fully deployed app. We're fetching content from this backend API. And yeah, I didn't need to do anything. This automatically generated hostname was given to me as well. So yeah, that's a quick demo on how easy it is to create a static web app in the portal. Thanks for tuning in.
Very nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitali. That was great. And then next up, I think what we have in store is the deployment from. I don't remember actually. Is it one of the CLIs or?
CLI. Yeah, let's do CLI.
Oh, CLI. Okay. That means it's my turn. Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Here we go. And let's bring this on the screen. Okay, I am going to have it like this. Okay, so I want to cover the AZ CLI because depending on your workflow, you may want to create a static web app through the AZ CLI in case if you're looking to have it as part of a pipeline or you're just more familiar with the CLI experience. So what I did is I have a React app, in this case, a React app. And if we look at my directory, I have my React app with my source. It's a simple hello world. And what I did is like Mitali did, I added an API. In this case, this is an Azure Functions code. And so in here, it's just a sample endpoint. For this specific project, I have it deployed to my GitHub. So if we go over to my GitHub, we'll see that I've pushed it there. And for static web apps, like Mitali mentioned, we make it really easy for you to have built-in CI/CD with your GitHub. So when you're using your AZ CLI, it's often better to start with your repository URL. And so here I have the command loaded for the AZ CLI. So if we look at it, basically, just by passing AZ static web app create, and then a couple other arguments will get ready in no time with a newly deployed static web app. So I'll give it a name. And in this case, I've already created sample SWA React Demo 3. So I'll go to sample SWA React Demo 4. Oops. Sample SWA Demo 4. I'll pass it my resource group, and then I have to configure it like Mitali did in the portal, but I'll pass the arguments. So my app location in this case is my React app, and then my source is that GitHub, and then a couple additional parameters. The location here, so Static Web Apps is a global service, but then just for your API backend and your preview environments, we have a specific location for that because they're not distributed. So that's what we have here. Then we have to pass in a GitHub Access token. And this is what we use in order to configure your GitHub Actions and link your repository to Static Web Apps. And then finally, I'll pass in the branch that I want to deploy. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so, okay, it's been created. And now I get sort of the content of my static web app. And what we have as well is my default host name. So if I were to go to my default host name, we'll see that right now my static web apps is live, but it's waiting for my content. And what that means is that the GitHub Actions is working in the background to build my static web app, in this case, my React app and the function app. And if I pull up that GitHub action, we can see that it's running the GitHub Actions in order to build and deploy my static web app. So in this case, I sort of have this repository set up with a lot of different static web apps. So they're all being built right now. But for this domain, default host name, let me go ahead and find Red Beach. One of these is going to be Red Beach here. Happy Mud, Thankful Sky, Victoria Sea. Okay, so it seems like, Red Beach. Maybe I've misconfigured it. React app is invalid. Okay, so I think in this case, I hadn't pushed my most recent commit to my repository. So in this case, I've added an API and a React app in 2 separate folders. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and add those. And then just put repository, because that's the way that I had configured my static web apps. And merge conflicts. Okay, now it should push. Okay, great. So we just pushed it. And if we go back to my GitHub, and if we refresh, I'm just going to go back to the GitHub Actions to show you that red beach. So this is going to be building in the background. Now I've provided it with the right configs, so this one should work fine. And I'll go ahead and just cancel the other ones because that's not the static web apps we're deploying to. Okay. Okay, perfect. So at this point, we have the Red Beach static web app. And in this case, it's going to be building my React application. So compiling it down to HTML and CSS, and also building my function app, packaging that into a function app, and then deploying it to static web apps. So if we were to go to the portal in this case, I could show you my resource group for this demo, and I can show you the static web app that I just created, this one here. And then that's the one, the Red Beach one. And right now it's building my content and then deploying it. So we just have to wait until that build and deploy is ready. In the meantime, I can actually show you in my repository. So Annina mentioned earlier that we have the AZ CLI and the SWA CLI. And I want to talk about that because I'm on the topic of CLI. So I figured I might as well dive into the difference between both. AZ CLI is really there to create and provision any different Azure resources. And one of those, of course, is static web apps. So if you're using your AZ CLI to create any other Azure resources, it's very convenient to also be able to create a static web app with the same CLI. But when we think about the developer workflow and the developer experience, then using the AZ CLI can be a bit cumbersome if we're focusing mainly on the development experience. And so what we have is we built this SWA CLI. And this SWA CLI is really your dev tool for developing static web apps. What's important about it is that it'll help you develop with your managed functions, but also it'll emulate the authentication that is provided by static web apps. So when you consider both of these tools, really the SWA CLI is there for your developer experience of developing your static web apps. Of course, there's also the option to deploy directly from the SWA CLI. But if we're thinking of provisioning Azure resources and any of those configurations, it's the AZ CLI. So that's what I just demoed today. I just demoed how to do the AZ CLI. And I'm sure in a future session, we'll dive deep into the developer experience with the SWA CLI. But on this note, let's go back to my GitHub Actions. In this case, we can see that, hey, we were able to build the React app and the function app and deployed it. And actually in this step of my deploy app, it'll tell me, okay, great, it's been deployed to my site. So if we look here, this is my deployed site. I just had to create it with my GitHub Actions, and I can make a call to my API. So if we look at the network request, in this case, oh, yeah, I didn't write it correctly. We couldn't find that page. Please check the URL. Okay. I think there may be a bug in my code, so sorry about that. I'll go ahead and fix that for next time. But as you can see, Mitali showed you that this works, so this is probably just an issue in my code. So, okay, in conclusion, that's how you can use your AZ CLI to create and deploy a static web app. There you
Nice. Thank you. All right, so we've done Portal, we've done CLI. I'm going to talk about VS Code, and I'm going to need somebody to set up the stream after I share, because it's going to get real sketchy. I'm going to assume that that's going to be updated, and you'll be able to see my VS Code instance here. Yeah, all right,
Yeah,
cool.
we can see it.
All right, so I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Instead of starting with GitHub or with the portal, I have just a Vue app. This is actually something that came from Jim Cooper from the Vue tutorial in Pluralsight. I walked through that. That's how I ended up building this when I was first learning Vue. Definitely recommend it. Good stuff. But what I want to talk about is you have this, you have your Vue, your React app, you have your code, and you want to get this deployed to static web apps. So prerequisites. First of all, if you go over and search for Azure, there's this Azure Tools extension pack that has the Azure Static Web Apps extension. That's what we're using. You don't have to install all of these. You can just install static web apps, but I definitely recommend getting the whole package. Another interesting thing is if you go in here, you can always find the repository for the extension. Alex, Nathan are like the core developers on this, fantastic devs. If you ever have issues with this, you can go right there and open issues. Anyway, another prerequisite, I am currently logged in to GitHub. I did see the comment about using DevOps or using other repo or source locations. We do support Azure DevOps. I'm not going to show it in this scenario. The VS Code extension is not quite there yet, but it does exist. Okay, so now I have nothing. I have no GitHub repo or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with create. I'm going to do create static web app. And it knows, hey, there's no GitHub repo, so we'll go ahead and create it. Prompts me for an initial commit. You'll see like this thing kind of lit up for a second there. And this is, oh wait, no, this is for the app itself. That's the GitHub repo. We'll choose West US. And like I said, this is Vue. And so when you pick Vue, it's going to default. It's selected because it's giving you the option to override it if you want to override it. But these are the defaults for Vue. Oh, cool. That's exactly what I wanted to happen in this very quiet demo. So I have no idea if that actually created or not. We may have to step back through that, but we'll see. Let's make sure. Okay, it did not. So we'll just do that again. Now the problem is that I have my Git repo and I don't want that. So we'll just get rid of that. What could go wrong? All right, one more time with feeling, create static web app. I'm gonna take all of these, although I'm reluctant. Defaults, there we go. Everything's cool. Oh man. This is not a good demo day, it seems. Let me see what's going on here. It didn't create my Git repo for some reason. All right, when in doubt, just make sure it did or didn't create anything. When in doubt, reload VS Code. And one more time, just to make sure we are not in a Git repo, we are not. Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time. Oh my goodness. And this is just an extension issue. Let me do this and then try it again. There we go. It's almost like I've run into some of these issues before because I've been using it for the past few years. That SWS, we will get through this. Nice. Okay, for real this time. Now, if it's going to open up in a second, but let's just run over here real quick. Okay, so now it has created my GitHub repo. If I go over here, oh, go away. And I GST, you'll see I have some stuff there. If I look here, you'll see like I have my initial commit, but also here is the commit on behalf of Azure to create the GitHub workflow, which is this fancy guy here. And I got this pop-up. I can edit the workflow, which is what I'm showing you here, or I can open the action on GitHub. It has, again, repos now created, workflows kicked off, all of that stuff. That's good, but there's more. So back over here in the workflow, you'll see there's some secrets dot with some fancy stuff. It went ahead and created, if you're not familiar with this, I think it's in here. There we go. I went ahead and created these variables on your behalf. So it goes and it talks to Azure. It gets everything that it needs to set all this up and puts it into that workflow file. And it also configures for PRs. Everything's cool. That's great. Now, the next piece is over here. If I refresh this, we have our Bud demo app. And actually, let me just focus on just static web apps. And since this is our main branch, it's our production environment. And from VS Code, you can actually access everything. So the same way that Mitali showed in the portal, Thomas actually touched a little bit on what you can do in the portal. A lot of that stuff is going to be here right in the VS Code environment as well. From here, you can also, there was a mention about creating serverless backends. You can do that here. If you do create HTTP function, that'll walk you through how to create one. We can just take our defaults. You can see some business going on over here. All right, so a handful of new files were created for us. So this is the function itself that opened, but it also creates this VS Code directory, which didn't exist before, along with a launch config to actually start up the function app. All of the tasks required to build a TypeScript function app, all that stuff is created for you. Our API directory here, I know I'm clicking around real fast, I'm sorry. And then of course, back here on our function. Now, I just wanna check back on this. And yes, we are deployed. So I like to go from here, just do browse site. And here we go. Again, this is my view app from the tutorial. Very fancy. No backend pieces, but like I said, you can use the extension to create your own HTTP functions that it'll automatically configure. By default, whenever I picked view back over here, you'll see that API is the default API location, which is exactly what the extension creates. So all of that stuff will just kind of magically fit together when you go through it. Yeah, there's also some debug features, but I don't want to touch that quite yet. So the extension does add this static web apps debug config that you can use to run both your front end and your back end at the same time. But we are already quite a bit into this, and I think I want to go a little deeper on that. So maybe next time we can talk about that. So yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, I am still here. Thank goodness. It's like, it's really quiet and you can't see. So I'm just kind of hoping everything is working right. So
You made it through, man.
Nice.
You made it through.
The other thing is questions. I've been watching the chat, but if there are any other questions that people have, like specific things they want to know. I saw something about Blazor. We're definitely working with our buds on the VS team to do some stuff with Blazor. I don't want to talk about things that may or may. Oh, I like that you got this. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Any other questions that we want to cover?
I wanted to mention, while we're on the topic of Blazor, I want to mention the different frameworks. So as you can imagine, like pretty much any framework that compiles to HTML and CSS will work. So Blazor is definitely one of them through WebAssembly, React, Vue, Angular, Solid, Quick, Svelte. There are just so many frameworks that do deploy to static web apps. And especially when we look nowadays with the sort of a resurgence of the server-side rendering and the hybrid rendering modes, a lot of that can also be done on static web apps. So Next.js is definitely one of them that we're working very hard to keep iterating upon that support. So I know that someone had tweeted out to us earlier in the week asking about Next.js. So that's definitely one of our big investments. And another thing that I wanted to share is while we're talking about this, one very interesting resource that basically I've been using it to show in here, but we basically make it really easy for you to get started with a couple templates. So in this repository, we have React, Angular, Nux, Next.js, React, vanilla HTML templates, and anytime you want to get started, this could be a really good place. Just go ahead and click use this template, and then create your static web app with your repository, whether that's to the portal, the Easy CLI, VS Code, whichever one you prefer. So I think that's really a good resource. And there are actually a couple other resources that I think we should make sure to mention. I don't know if you want to do that now, Matt, or if there are any questions that we want to discuss first.
Yeah, somebody was asking to share the URL for that one. I don't.
Yeah,
so, there's a question about tokens through XMS client principle that we can talk about.
Yes.
Static web dev is the org name. Oh wait, let's do Anthony's instead, so his face shows up. Yeah.
There you go. We should have Anthony on one of these at some point. I think that'd be really fun. Did we want to ask Ivan's question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna add folks back here.
Yeah. Oh yes. The whole squad. Okay. So for context, the XMS client principle is a header that we add to requests to your API, and that gives you the user credentials for in order to use that as part of static web apps authentication. So I can actually let Annina talk a little bit more about this, since she's been very familiar with the feature.
Yeah, we do attach the header to every API request.
We attach the header, but we currently don't add the access token. This is something we're working out a design of whether this will be feasible or not, and we can keep you posted on GitHub on the status.
Yeah, the access token and the claims are two areas that we are investigating. They're not in progress, they're not committed either, but we are investigating how that could be done. So as always, we really welcome the feedback. And like I've been seeing John and Jorge commenting in the chat here. And so to us, this helps us influence our next set of investments. So please keep it coming, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
While we're on the topic of feedback, I did want to bring up our GitHub. Can I do that, or did you want to talk about anything else, Matt?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, well, go for it. Do you want to share that?
No, go for it. You go and share. I will also say that I can't speak for everyone, but we do have our Twitter handles and our names. I have DMs open. I don't know if everybody else does, but my DMs are open. I am incredibly happy to hear from all of you. Like questions, complaints, comments, anything good or bad, it's all good. So
DMs or just even tagging us.
Yeah.
tagging Matt, Thomas. You can tag Annina too. But we have a main account at Azure Static Web Apps. Or is that our Twitter? Azure Static Apps, Azure Static Web Apps. Let's get that. We'll actually put in the chat so that if ever you're curious, you can add there as well. At Azure Static Apps. So I'm going to put that in the chat. There you go. There we go. So definitely feel free to provide any feedback on Twitter and either at us or DM us and any of your feedback. But one other really important resource that we have to call out in this community call is our sort of open source GitHub for feedback. So we use this GitHub. It doesn't have any important source code in here. We really use it to track different issues that are going on with static web apps. So that can be anything about your authentication or your deployment or a specific configuration. We go through these regularly, and this is where we look to for feedback if ever there's any bugs or any feature asks. So that's a really important resource that we use to influence our planning and our decisions of investments into different areas. And I should also call out not only the issues tab, but also the discussions tab. And so on the discussions tab, here's where we announced our support for Next.js. We have a couple discussions going on about different features that are coming up. So definitely make sure that you bookmark this tab if ever you're working a lot with static web apps, because this and the Twitter, I would say, are our main sources for getting that feedback. And actually, GitHub is the one where everyone is regularly looking at it. The whole engineering team is looking at it and providing feedback and responses to the different questions there. So yes, GitHub. And I'm going to put this in the chat, and I'm going to bring it on screen because I think that so that would be the perfect opportunity to make sure that you do have access to this link here.
Nice.
Excellent. So did we have any other resource that we wanted to share? Matt, I know you have our outline, or at least the bullet points that we wanted to hit today.
Let's see. I closed it. There's the other one, the monthly.
Yes,
of
course. What is it? Azure Static Web App.dev.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it in the chat. That one right there.
Yes. So it sort of slipped my mind because I was thinking about feedback. But when we are talking about any announcements or highlighting any community contributions, we have this site here. So, okay, you have it on screen, perfect. So we're talking about this site here. And here we have sort of our regular monthly blog. So here, Rashmi, Nitya, and Sarah were writing our essentially our roundup for the month of January. Here we share any product news, any dev resources, and community contributions. So this is really an interesting site if you want to dive into static web apps, different specific usages, you want to see different either community or our own dev resources on static web apps. It's a really, I'm glad we pinned it and we didn't miss it, because this is a super important place if you're looking to get more involved with static web apps. Any upcoming events and did you knows, and we're always looking for more content. So if you've written a blog, if you've used static web apps, if you've written anything about it, please feel free to let us know. We would love to hear from you. And yeah, that's a good call, John. This is built with Docusaurus. So yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
All right, great.
So we covered every topic.
We're done.
Yeah. Okay.
We're
Okay.
good.
I think this is a success. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Your feedback and your interactions was super fun, and we should leave off on a teaser for the next Dev Community Stand-Up. And Matt, I think you alluded to us talking about developer experience and tooling.
You mean during my panic demo? And I was
Yes, during
yeah.
the demo gods when they were being cruel to
We
you.
got there. There, it's cool.
Yeah. So in the next edition, which will be the last Thursday of February, which do we have the date? I don't think we've confirmed it, but we're looking at
23rd.
The 23rd of February. In that session, we're going to be diving into the developer experience, the VS Code experience, and the SWA CLI experience, which really brings the whole local development story together. So make sure to chime in for that. I think it'll be a pretty good session. Okay, excellent. Then on that note, I think we could end it there. And thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mitali. Thank you, Annina. This was great. And we'll see each other in the next one.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Haley.
Okay. Yeah, thanks
Thanks
everyone.
for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you.